Okay, time for some more illogic. Last time we went over our Week 6 match against Steve Chuck and his Waterdeep Wobbuffets. Please go check out that video first if you've not done so already, as we went over the Teambuilder and battle in which, spoiler alert, the Bouffalant grabbed another big win. This is a 3-0, mostly behind the heroics of Rotom-Mow with a clutch Terra Blast on Chen-Pao and Trick onto Necrozma. That brings our record up to 4-2, at least clinching yet another non-losing season, but the competition is ridiculous this season to go along with the enormous 18-team field, and 4-4 may not cut it. No playoff guaranteed for the 500 teams quite yet. That means this match means a little more, so this time we'll be going over our Week 7 match against Megu and his 4-2 Corviknight Clobberers. Timestamps will be in the description. Like Megu's brother, coach of the Heatwave, I have not yet played against him, but he had an amazing debut before falling to Steve in the quarters, just a season before his brother did the exact same. He had an off season in 14, but it was a pretty different concept in doubles, not that it should count any less for the championship, of course. We also executed a trade that season, sending out Garganackle for Pheasantipity, which unfortunately was the only mon I didn't actually bring to the playoffs that season. Megu seems like a good dude, but after a couple of L's in a row, we're going to have to try and keep that streak going by delivering here. One of us clinches a playoff berth, the other heads to the precipice against yet another tough opponent, so let's see if we can pull out ahead here. He's got the Salazzle, Ogerpon-Wellspring, Alolan Dugtrio, Zapdos, Great Tusk, my beloved, Overquill, Illumise, Altaria, Metagross, Primarina, and Little Knackle stack, with Terra Captains being obviously Ogerpon, as well as Altaria and Knackle stack. Yeah, it's another case of those top tiers being absolutely silly, but with the lower tiers being more matchup dependent. But there are quite a few elements of OU in the top mons for sure, and some of these other mons have been quite important for him so far too. Of course, among those, Illumise really doesn't do much of anything. It can T-Wave, Encore, Tailwind, and Wish, I believe, and that's about it. I can play around that for sure, so I'm not particularly concerned about it. There are a few surprises about how well the rest of the mons are in the matchup, actually, but not the next ones, as I mentioned, Altaria. Being held back by other mons wanting Terra, obviously, it's tough to figure out what exactly it should be doing. I think a D-Dance set with Roost is probably the scariest, or maybe as a wall to Cinderace. But if it's doing one of those things, it's not exactly doing enough against the rest of the team, not compared to what the rest can do. Alolan Dugtrio is very funny. I used it in Season 4 to great success, but with Great Tusk already here and yet another similarly typed mon also better than it, plus that extra speed not doing anything for it really over Tusk, aside from outspeeding Typhlosion, I don't think Dugtrio has much to do here. You want something bold though, so I'm saying Metagross does not show up, despite the obvious advantages to it and my absolute adoration for it in my debut generation of 4. Shout out to anti-lead alum Metagross. BKC rambling aside, the Gross has gotten some nice tools recently, looking at use Psychic Fangs and Knockoff among others, but in this matchup, it's kind of struggling. It gets EQ for Empoleon, gets hit on its weaker special side such that it probably loses that trade. It's outsped by Cinder and Typhlosion without being able to hit hard with Bullet Punch. Gligar walls most variants and can chip it down alongside it. Bisharp would love a free Throat Chop or SD, and Rotom of course would love to sit on it, burn, or continue to switch around, so Metagross has a lot of problems. Finally, despite him favoring it so heavily this season, I think Overquill has some issues here too. Intimidate with Black Sludge could make for a neat tank, but it's still going to be chunked by Cinder. Rotom outspeeds, Bisharp doesn't really care and would love a boost, and Empoleon take advantage of it. Even Latios wouldn't mind just dropping a Draco, and with a few good answers to it, I think he could do better. That includes Salazzle as one of those options, who definitely worries me with its speed and ability to run Corrosion. It's tough to resist both stabs on it, so an offensive variant is probably concerning, but also the sub-toxic set without Cinderace here could be very tough to handle, and finally T-Spikes could become an issue very quickly if I'm not careful about those hazards. I have an unusual candidate to take advantage of those. Yeah, I think Knackle stack actually looks pretty good here. Iron Defense and Recover, adding in the great resistances to Fire and Ghost as well as Status among others, and it's a decent check to my Fire types even without Terra. Salt Cure can rip holes in the team decently well, and paired with T-Spikes could be devastatingly stally to deal with, or even just as a pivot for double switches. It's a pain. But those top 4 are absolutely crazy. I actually think I handle Ogerpon relatively well. Cinder outspeeds, even if I can't hit it with fire moves post-Terra. Latios speed ties, Rotom resists both stabs, Iron Hands and Empoleon are quite tanky, even Appleton avoiding play rough walls up pretty well, but it is genuinely good enough to still put in work against me regardless. I think I'm more worried though about it forcing me out with strong moves and then setting up spikes and the like in my face, or hitting a big U-turn or a nasty crit Ivy Cudgel, the water typing again being one I generally struggle to resist. Zapdos is a crazy mod, of course. Having used it in Season 9, I enjoyed how surprisingly tanky and powerful it is, only amplified by specific investment and its unique typing. I have a couple of possible answers to it, but if as soon as they come in Zapdos U-turns out, it was all for naught, or maybe it's content to stay in and slug it out anyways, getting strong stab electric moves in and roosting up along the way while maybe hitting hurricanes on me or getting some static. It's tough to bring down there, and if the T-Bolts start hitting too strong, I'll be in trouble trying to beat it. Great Tusk is a monster. That physical profile is insane and very difficult for things like Cinderace or Iron Hands to do anything about. Remember my concerns about Baxcalibur's EQ and Ice Cold Crash? Same thing, but with a stronger ground move and less powerful ice move, in exchange for more physical bulk, Rapid Spin or Booster Energy or Bulk Up to boost up stats with minimal coverage needed and plenty of send-up opportunities? Yikes. And finally, Primarina has made waves in OU this gen with the gaining of Flip Turn, allowing it to better use that water fairy profile offensively and defensively. It's a little slow and a little fragile on the physical side, but whoo boy does everything else make up for it. Calm Mind, Assault Vest, Scarf, Specs, with this much power and an ice typing, it can get away with most anything and succeed at ripping holes. So for me, for the first time, Typhlosion looks just abysmal here. Primarina, as mentioned, can wall it easily, get off a big hit. Tusk outspeeds with Booster, Ogerpon laughs at it, Zapdos doesn't mind trading with it, Knuckle Stack resists both stabs, Overquill's a resist. Yeah, it's not looking too great for that. Komala has some uses actually if I'm worried about those T-spikes as well as spikes from Ogerpon, but man, I just cannot invest enough stats anywhere to convince me that it's the play. Just not enough speed or ability to touch Great Tusk to make this worth a pick. I did seriously waffle between the other 9 though. I did end up eliminating Yanmega next when I saw my other Terra options. There wasn't one particular Terra type that really stood out to me. Maybe Electric to hit the waters and resist Zapdos' moves while still being able to hit Great Tusk with Air Slash, but even then it was tough to find that power to break through anything. Even Prim can easily run AV, and Water Pun can Terra and get a Spit F boost, and Knuckle Stack doesn't care that much. Spit F Zapdos still walls pretty well. It's a bit too tough for Yanmega. Gligar had a nice role here as a Corrosion Salazzle, and Zapdos check plus Overquill and Metagross didn't do too much to it either. But in return, if he swaps out of the obvious EQ, I can knock off, I guess, but Ogerpon doesn't care. Tusk is kind of nice. U-turn out, I guess, but that's not that much, and a bad prediction or a steady stream of offense just overwhelms it, so it's out. Finally, I think it came down to bringing one of my 2 steel types, and Empoleon just missed the cut. It had some great use, honestly, resisting both of Prim's stabs, but what's it doing in return? Same with Ogerpon. What do I do back? I liked Helmet as an idea too, but Tusk and Zapdos really could not care all that much less. Without much to do back and being too much an invitation to some top threats, a recent team MVP will be riding the bench here. Another week, another subpar for performance in prep. Not used to actually having to do my job instead of get ready for Pokemon matches. Still think we've got some great tools, and I stopped by the kitchen on the way into the match too, hoping some of this can work out. That's going to start, of course, with this itemless Cinderace to give Acrobatics the big base power boost, doing upwards of 2/3 to Great Tusk depending on investment, while also living a stab move coming in from it too, thanks to gaining the flying typing. Willow is the idea on the switch to rack some damage, meaning we can actually relatively easily 1v1 Tusk in neutral, assuming he doesn't grab the speed boost from Booster or Rapid Spin to then read us. Otherwise, straightforward, Pyro Ball just does excellent damage, and U-turn to keep up momentum. That's slightly riskier if Zapdos is the switch, so we're hoping to avoid static firstly. Outspeeding his whole team with this kind of power is a big deal, hoping Cinder can put in the finest of work. Speaking of speed, Latios does speed tie the Ogerpon and Dugtrio and otherwise outspeeds all but the Salazzle, and I think if we can use that to set up and put in some fine work, particularly using Calm Mind to boost up, then we're going to be good. Recover if we can tank a hit and come in again later and utilize the Electric and Psychic coverage to hit Primarina and Great Tusk chiefly, among others. The Result Barrier is used to still beat Primarina, especially if I can Calm Mind up and then 2-hit KO even Assault Vest sets, and if I can set up enough Spit Up, that'll help out our recovers as well. That's the idea, pretty simple. Moving on to another simple idea in the Rotom-Mow, who will be going Terra Poison this time. That should help with U-turns, Sludge Waves from Salazzle, Moonblast from Primarina, and CCs from Great Tusk, as well as going neutral to things like Fire and Ice coverage. We outspeed plus attack Overquill and below, including a bulkier Tusk, to get the modest nature for better damage rolls on things like Primarina. And we've got the pretty easy moveset here too. Volt Switch for momentum, T-Bolt consistent damage, Leaf Storm trunks the Great Tusk, and Willow again to potentially help that out and stop things like Ogerpon more consistently, especially prior to Terra. Let's take a look at our other Terra option, though. Both options have good typings to stay on prior to Terra, so we'll see. But it is going to be the debut of Appleton here, too, rocking Terra Ghost as the neutral option to basically everything I'm expecting. Stop close combat and resist Ice Spinner, neutral to Moonblast, resist both the Salazzle stabs, neutral to Hurricane, neutral to all but knockoff from Ogerpon. It's just a solid defensive typing without much dark coverage expected from the Clobberers, in addition to keeping Thick Fat to still resist fire and ice coverage. To that end, Apple Acid is of course quite spammable with EQ as the option to turn the tables entirely on Salazzle, even if I have to eat a Toxic. Leech Seed is very spammable post Ogerpon Terra, and Recover to truly stall out whatever I need to. Wish I could have found room for Hazards to help out with this stalling possibility, but I'll take where we're at, honestly. And for only the second time this season, we've got a couple options on what to Terra, which will probably just be up to circumstance, but I like the options we've got here. Next up is the standard Bisharp, with the only difference being Sword Stance being removed for Grass Knot. Yeah, Grass Knot actually does almost half to Great Tusk, and if I think that's the easiest switch in, to me that's the option. Past that, speed for modest Primarina, and if we do in fact outspeed, we can still 2-hit KO with Iron Head against max HP Prim. We can take an Ogerpon hit for less than half before Terra as well, unless he's got low kick, and then Throat Chop for consistent damage with Sucker Punch for anything out of control. I don't think I'm finding much of an opportunity to Sword Stance, so my decision is to go for 4 attacks with a potentially bold play in Grass Knot. Just getting off that damage into Tusk could be huge, puts it in Acrobatics range, Luster Purge range, Leaf Storm range, etc., so I'm pretty okay with that. But if just Grass Knot, Bisharp, EQ Appleton, and Itemless Cinder weren't enough for you, I've got great news about the Iron Hand set. We've got near max Spadef, or near max Spadef, with the Careful Nature as well to boost that further. Speed for Primarina, dumping the 8 remaining speed EVs into speed, so that is 8 EV Primarina is what we're outspeeding, and a moveset including Iron Defense and Body Press. Yeah, we were looking to boost up and go with Rest for Longevity alongside Leftovers to really punish Zapdos in particular, and Thunder Punch, which should be doing over 80% to Primarina, so just a little bit of chip on that, and if we outspeed, we could actually just win with this set. Imagine you turning out with Cinderace out of Primarina, and we actually could O-Go from there, which is very funny. The Spadef means Salazzle struggles to break, especially with Rest, so a few conditions met. Ideally, it'll be Great Tusk being down, probably Ogerpon down, or just not critting through already set up defense boosts, and as already mentioned, a bit of chip on Primarina, and we should actually be set. That's going to be the team. Again, a little wonky and weird compared to the usual, but I'm ready to see what we can accomplish with it. Okay, no Knuckles deck is kind of nice, actually, and it's Illumise. Didn't really look it up ahead of time, but appears to have Light Screen, Encore, T-Wave. That's about all I'm worried about, not an issue. I feel pretty good then about that, but it's time to figure out the lead. In my opinion, I have a tough time swapping into something like Great Tusk, and it plus Salazzle can set up hazards that I wouldn't appreciate. So perhaps we can lead with something that can handle either one, say with Latios. Threatens a possible Scarf set too, which could cause some confusion. Good luck, have fun, to Megu. Well, that's an Illumise lead, which, yeah, that's probably just going to click T-Wave, huh? I'm not actually worried about it having Bug Stab, so I'm just going to go into the Rotom to, yep, Immune T-Wave, perfect. Now my options are this. I can Volt Switch, an easy move to slowly swap around unless he goes into Great Tusk. In that case, Willow is a tempting play as well. But even then, at neutral, I'm okay with just clicking the Terra button and burning it the turn after, which would help out hands later too. And I become an excellent Tusk Wall in the process. So I think I'm just going to go for the easy Volt Switch. Baton Pass out in 2. Salazzle, good. 2/3 its health gone already too, implying this is an offensive set, not the sub-toxic set I was worried about. My answers are not that plentiful, so that damage is huge, and we're just going into Cinderace as my outspeed option. And actually, Pyro Ball is enough to KO. I mean, it'd be nice to hit, but it would also be excellent to both cover a switch out as well as bait in something like the Great Tusk, when which I can then surprise right after. So we'll just not outspeed. Good prep with the Scarf, didn't see that coming, but the poison is unfortunate. It means I've only got a couple more turns left with Cinder compared to before. So when the answer is Great Tusk, with no booster energy, by the way, I've got several different options. I can of course click Will-O-Wisp, which will neuter Great Tusk for the rest of the battle, minus the Lumberry, or a miss, and the Great Tusk in the room of a possible miss, yeah. Thank you, Pyro Ball, for not missing at least. I can also click Acrobatics, potentially doing upwards of 2/3, while also possibly avoiding the ground move that could be coming in. In both cases, I do risk being knocked out, certainly with Willow, as I keep accumulating damage from poison. The other choice is to swap out, probably into Appleton as the defensive answer, probably, or back to Rotom-Mow, who is running out of checks. But I'd love to keep Rotom healthy for Primarina too. And also importantly, both of those options would keep Cinder alive. For what? Zapdos to swap in? Especially if I'm just trying to get off an Acro. That's not really what I want to do, and if Tusk can read that and just get up hazards, that's pretty tough. I'm a bit traumatized by the possibility of missing. I don't think I'm going to Wisp, even though that would seem to be the path to an Iron Hand sweep. Even then, maybe there's something weird with the Illumise I'm not seeing. And switching, I'm not convinced Appleton should be the play here. Instead, I think I want to attack right now. It covers the possibility of Stealth Rock, which I think is relatively likely with my only possible removal already so low, and also covers EQ and Headlong Rush, which is funny because I become a flying type, and is otherwise, well, not the safest actually, considering Latios, Rotom, and Appleton are all possible switches, so maybe we won't be going for a ground move. But still, I can guarantee some damage will stick. It's significant damage, even with a low Cinder whose health is being sapped away. It would be nice to still outspeed the Ogerpon, but it's an easy swap out into Zapdos for him whenever I come in, and the poison is really the final nail in the coffin of this decision, or wherever the metaphor is going. I'm just going to go ahead and click the acrobatics. 77% is going to be very significant, and the Clobberers make another good play here by going for Rapid Spin to KO alongside the Poison. I also figured even if I got KO'd, Latios will make an easy revenge option with the Psychic move, but now Knockoff or Ice Spinner are big possibilities that could be coming through, and I don't like that now that I can be outsped. Props to the speed control games being played by the Clobberers right now, but I do really want this Great Tusk down. Look at Iron Hands right now. Ogerpon crit is about the only way I'm seeing him break through me right now, along with potential shenanigans from Illumise actually, but I still have my 2 other Prankster T-Wave immunities that can mess with it, so we're getting close to an excellent spot. My revenge option, as I've outlined, Iron Hands is not it. Bisharp, of course, is not it either. My other mons, Latios and Rotom, both very much want to keep their health up. That isn't to say my choice Appleton doesn't, but I do have several ways, I think, to be able to heal this up compared to the other options, with some good Leech Seeds going a long way here. To that end, I still don't know which way I want to go for Terra. Ice Spinner should be coming in here, but with only a single weakness to it, thanks to Thick Fat, I'm fine with taking that if needed, actually. I'll just click Apple Acid here, and if Zapdos comes in, I think I'll think about Terra for the possible Hurricane and go for the slow Leech Seed, but we're not going to need to worry about that. Knockoff, the option over Ice Spinner on the set, is interesting. We lose lefties, and he loses the Great Tusk, 5-4, as in comes the Ogerpon. I like the overall position we're in, actually. It doesn't look like either Prim or Zapdos should be able to do much more than 1 KO. Illumise is not a damage threat, so that leaves us with, well, we don't outspeed with Cinder anymore, which in hindsight was maybe a better reason to save Cinder than I gave it credit for in the moment. But we should be able to live a hit with anything, even with Terra, unless it SDs up. That said, the present situation is interesting. What to do this turn? I can't really do anything to dissuade a Swords Dance right now. Apple Acid is doing, what, a third, maybe? Even if he Terras, which he shouldn't, it'd be a +1 Spadef along with the weakness. Maybe that would make Apple Acid a 2 at KO with the extra effect. After that, maybe I could think it would be 3. But should I just risk that? A Play Rough will just KO me, but that's... well, how bad is that? And could I just Terra to avoid that? For what, just for a third of Waterpon's HP? Meanwhile, though, at +2, Play Rough does not KO Rotom, even without Terra, most of the time. 3 in 16 rolls KO. In exchange, I can do about half with T-Bolt, a little less, or about 2/3 with Leaf Storm or Burn with Will-O-Wisp. For reference, looks like Latios should also be doing about half, as should Sucker Punch from Bisharp. There are actually no guarantees in here, are there? But so long as we get off enough damage, Bisharp should be able to clean up a little bit with Sucker specifically, as we don't live the +2 Terra Ivy Cudgel, unfortunately. I think I'm just going to, as I outlined, Rotom does not get KO'd by +2 Play Rough, so I'm going to go Appleton into the Rotom. Yep, that's an SD, and now we need to decide what to do. Willow can miss, Leaf Storm can miss, and as a result, I liked the idea of T-Bolt, which looks like it's doing just enough to put Ogerpon in range of a Sucker Punch, which means we'll probably be able to force it out and thus not give it another chance to set up again with the rest of the match, thanks to that Bisharp, which is actually looking incredible in the endgame with Salazzle and Tusk both down. So I think we'll go for a T-Bolt, is what we're going to do here, and hope we can live the roll. This guy has knockoff too! Well, that was a 5 and 8 chance to Oko, and he did get it. Well, dang, I guess I assumed it'd be Grass, Water, Fairy coverage, but it's actually Grass, Water, Dark coverage. That is unfortunate, especially as with that assumption in mind, we're just going to go right back out into the Appleton anyways that we swapped out of in the first place with him at +2. So, without Play Rough, how am I being hit? It's SD and Knockoff, definitely Ivy Cudgel, and the last move I'm assuming is either Trailblaze or Horn Leech, and none of those are hitting my Appleton, like, at all. In fact, if I can get the slow recover up on this Knockoff, showing just how little it's doing, from here we can just Apple Acid away and force it out. It took away my Rotom, meaning we'll have to look more at how to deal with the Primarina a little bit later, but for now, I think we could be okay. So as outlined, look how little Knockoff is doing. That's pretty nice, so we can just stay without Terra. And, oh, it does have Play Rough. Oh. That's not good. Well, I was a bit afraid of another SD, admittedly, so I didn't Terra to put myself in range of +4 Knockoff, but, well, that's not good. No grass coverage, huh? Well, I'm running out of options very quickly now, but, and I'll go over this in a bit, the Bisharp and Iron Hands in the back are actually looking still quite incredible, actually, compared to the Latios, who is going to be my next attempt here to stop this Ogerpon. Those two might still be able to win in the back. As I mentioned, I've just wanted Bisharp to be the one to finish things off in the back, finish this off in particular, so this Maybe our final shot to win, actually. We could have won with a player-off miss, or knockoff not getting the range against Rotom, or Appleton staying in earlier, but now it's come to this. We're probably speed-tied. I think I noted that the knockoff damage from Ogerpon shows it's Jolly. In that case, we have a 50-50 shot at getting an attack in here, or better. T-Bolt or Luster Purge. I think he's finally going to Terra. Nothing else to avoid, really, aside from maybe Iron Hand Stab, and getting that Speed F boost in case he loses the speed tie. In that case, T-Bolt is absolutely the call. By the way, it's not just a 50-50 shot here. I do have the Roselli Berry, and Megu may have noticed I have brought in previous matches or be worried about a Colbur Berry. Player off does have a missed chance, but there's a shot he goes for the fairy move instead, in which case we should live a player off. But of course, player off can miss, so maybe that's just not the safe play anyways. Okay, so with that outlined, here's the game. And if you had any doubt about how our season is going, by the way, we do lose the speed tie. He goes for knockoff, and that's 3 KOs without losing any health for Ogerpon. I can go into Bisharp and Sucker Punch. The crit is basically spitting in my face here and go down. And Iron Hands can live the next hit potentially here at, let's see, how about 1 HP and get the KO. But with Primarina able to tank a hit, Charm, Encore, Illumise lurking in the back, and the option of a Zapdos that just outspeeds and can definitely do 7%, we do fall yet again 3-0. GG to Megu, man, did that just not come together. Quick game here with seemingly few variables, but I've got two things to talk about here, which are my confidence in Bisharp Iron Hands winning at the end, and the odds of getting to that point. So firstly, Bisharp and Iron Hands versus the Clobberers. In the case that we win the speed tie and get the damage off there, Ogerpon is in range of Sucker Punch. Well, mostly. It actually looks like it's about a 50-50 shot to get a good enough rolls on both T-Bolt and Sucker Punch. Maybe a little bit better than that, so I may factor that in later. But let's assume that T-Bolt got a good roll, or parried, or crit, or the Sucker crits like it actually did here for now. He can certainly swap out of Ogerpon, actually, after I get the speed tie, saving it to help try and revenge the Iron Hands. And if he does, he's going Zapdos. Either way, Zapdos will be in. Iron Hands answers it every single time. If he goes Illumise, Bisharp handles that every single time. So if he swaps around, the main issue, of course, should be that Primarina can hit hard with Moonblast. Of note, my speed creeping on Iron Hands did work, and I did outspeed it by exactly 1 point. And Bisharp, of course, then also outspeeds. Bisharp Ironhead against 248 Prim, HP Prim has a 97.7% chance to 2 at KO. And we also have the 30% flinch chance. Well, we take 48 to 57 from Moonblast and only 25 to 30 from Draining Kiss. So we still win that 1v1 even if Draining Kiss gets him out of range of the 2 at KO. Draining Kiss into Moonblast will still not KO. The issue then becomes Zapdos, who can swap in and in particular proc Static. Meanwhile, Iron Hands takes 62 to 74 for Moonblast and then does 82 to 97 with Thunder Punch, meaning we heal up from lefties in between as well. So that's 62 to 74, looking more like 50 to 62 or so. Draining Kiss maybe heals enough to stay out of range of an Iron Head as well. I kind of doubt that though. So we need to tank a Moonblast from somewhere unless we get a lucky flinch there with Iron Head or get the full para from Thunder Punch. And we may need to also tank an Ivy Cudgel if he smartly saves Ogerpon. And we do obviously live 1 at about half health. So if we can manage it such that Iron Hands having to tank an Ivy Cudgel means Bisharp tanks the Moonblast, we're in good shape, with, again, the only variable against us being the static from Zapdos. But when Bisharp beats Illumise 100% and Iron Hands beats Zapdos 100%, it's just static shenanigans that could drown me. In fact, just staying in with Hands as long as possible to start the endgame would be incredible, especially if I could get up an Iron Defense and Body Press without Illumise coming, which would mean I'd only take a quarter from Ogerpon after 1 Iron Defense, could live a Moonblast after, of course, which is kinda insane. Do I think it's 100%? Again, smart switching to get static procs would be concerning, especially because I think he would try to get a situation in which it would be Bisharp against Primarina to force an Iron Head, which could mean that Zapdos could have had a decent shot. So if he swaps into it, let's say it doesn't proc, I go Iron Hands, and then what? I KO Primarina or Ogerpon. I'm basically getting a KO, or I get big damage off on Illumise, who is barely 3-hit KO'd by Iron Hands, meaning a Thunder Punch into a -2 Thunder Punch because he's got Charm, puts it in range of another Thunder Punch. So if I just swap out after my second attack into Illumise, we're good. And of course, how do I beat Zapdos? It's going to be with Hands at +6. Body Press will force Roost, of course, at which point it will not resist Body Press. So if Zapdos wants to stay in, I will boost a bit and win. And if Illumise is gone, that's even easier. If we get that Iron Defense off, we win after Illumise is down. Even at +4, we can't be taken down by Charm, thanks to still 2 at KOing Prim most of the time with Body Press, and Illumise always goes down to 2 +4 Body Presses as well. So again, guarantee No. Static allowing Bishop to be outsped means hands may be forced to tank hits from both water types, which it can't without setup, and even then high crit chance on Cudgel. And maybe we miss the 2-hit KO on Prim from, say, +4 body press, or maybe he just switches around properly. But otherwise, I think we're pretty much in the clear. I want to say it's better than like a 70-30 to win. The static chance is there, of course, a bit of potentially in the case of like a crit, but also we have things like if Ironhead flinched and whatnot, assuming you played optimally. But that's just if we got to the end game with just those two. What if we'd won the Rotom-Roll, still had Appleton, Latios, or Playrough had missed Appleton and we got to get that Apple Acid hit off into Latios winning the speed tie? And the second topic here is going to be the Ogerpon, of course. The turn I want to go to is going to be, I think, relatively obvious here. It's going to be this turn where he swapped out the Appleton. Not this one, but we'll go ahead to the end of the turn here. So in the moment, I get why I did what I did. I didn't want to set it to set up freely, but that bit of damage, it would have made the other two rolls, Rotom living and Latios outspeeding, guaranteed to work had they worked. That is +2 Spadef, and the damage from Apple Acid would have brought Ogerpon into T-Bolt range from Latios and Rotom, as well as crit Sucker Punch, which we did end up getting, and that's a sticking point. Do I call this a bad play because I got a crit on Sucker? I think there were other reasons to call it bad, especially the possibility of living at +2, especially if I decided to Terra out of my typing the turn after the SD. Imagine he Sword Stances, I Apple Acid, I Terra as he clicks player off. We're no longer weak to it. We actually do live, even at this range, and get off another hit, meaning Sucker Punch guarantees the ability to beat that. And even if Appleton goes down, we have a full health Rotom who doesn't need its Terra anymore, and Latios in the back. If we click knockoff anticipating the Terra, we actually still live. +2 knock into itemless Terra goes to Appleton to 63 to 75, though Ivy Cudgel would have KO'd, so that would have been tough. Again, less reliance on anything else. Sucker Punch forcing it out and not letting it SD again would have been huge. I think that's the part that I'm kind of missing here. So the biggest misplay, I thought I thought it out during the game, but it was a play where a Monkey Brain Caveman Pokemon was optimal. Stay in an attack and you'll probably win. Next play is the Rotom. Again, 5 and 8 chance to get KO'd was achieved, but the 3 and 8 chance to live did not happen. If it did, T-Bolt goes off, and well, just like before, we had several rolls here to go through. T-Bolt from Rotom does do 48 to 56 because of the modest nature. That's huge. Latios T-Bolt against Terra Ogerpon does 45 to 54. Sucker Punch from Bisharp does 47 to 56. See how this could get kind of complicated? Which 2 hits did we want to go off? I'd love to just say, it was a 3 and 8 chance to live and a 1 and 2 chance to outspeed, and if we did that, we'd win. But I'm not 100% sure about that. The Sucker Punch crit at the end teased us, of course, and the other 2 T-Bolts could have crit too, or paralyzed, or even gotten a full para after, so there are plenty of other factors involved too. But this has gone on far too long already, so I'll just say this. Had I stayed in with Appleton and attacked and then survived the next hit to land another Apple Acid, I'd have been just fine, and won relatively handily thanks to the combination of Hands and Bisharp. If Rotom had survived the knockoff and gotten off that hit, odds are pretty darn good, actually, that we'd be fine, because that roll was very nice. If Latios had won the speed tie, odds are pretty good we would have won, but not guaranteed, because that roll was a little bit lower. Y'all know how much I'd love to blame the luck, but it's probably just that switching out of Appleton that did it. It's a shame that this format is so punishing, but a big shout out to Mego for prepping great sets and playing so well that he forced me into such a situation too. The Scarf Salazzle was a big deal for Cinder, the damage and the poison, 30% chance, convincing me to swap out. Had I saved the Cinder, we probably could have been a little better, at least forced the Ogerpon out from it being at +2, and I should have been more willing to risk the Appleton to that end, but that's a bit longer rabbit hole. So instead, we got 2 final things, which are, again, A, I needed to be able to have options to force out the Ogerpon, which needed to be either keeping Cinder alive because it outspeeds, or having it make sure it gets in range of the Sucker Punch, and I don't think Appleton needed to do literally anything else but do that, so that was kind of a mistake. And the second, as always, GG to Megu. I don't think I necessarily played poorly, but for one regretful play, I think, followed by bad luck, which could have bailed me out, I'm going to guess it was about a 50-50 overall to get out of that situation between the roll on Rotom, the speed tie, possible static games with Bisharp and Zapdos in the end. So I'm going to go with 50% me, 50% luck. That seems like a pretty reasonable split. But what isn't reasonable, as we wrap up Week 7's video, is the playoff picture and our schedule. Seems like we've been playing pretty well recently against some very good teams, but at 4-3, we're not actually guaranteed playoffs, even with our more lenient playoff picture rules. Everyone who finishes in the top 8, or with the same record as the number 8 seed, will make playoffs. And right now, we're actually the number 8 team at 4-3, with the 6th through 10 seeds all being 4-3. What that means is that whatever a majority of us 5 do is what the cutoff will be. If at least 3 of us lose, the cutoff is 4-4, and we make it in no matter what. But if 3 of us win, the number 8 seed is 5-3, and it would take 5 wins to make it in. So despite our schedule, playing 4 of the top 5 teams, plus Steve's Wobbuffets, and 2 more 3 and 4 teams, all but one of which picked in the top half of the draft, by the way, we need to win one more time to guarantee playoffs, or hope for some help from others. On top of that, our schedule has still not let up, as Greg and his Calgary Corviknights await us in the final week. Last time we played was my worst match in recent memory, so we're going to need to put that behind us to best this back-to-back regular season champ and secure a playoff spot in the most brutal race yet. We'll see you there.